and the world thought was finished. At 32 years old, Magic Johnson stood in front of the world and said the words no superstar ever wants to say. He was walking away from basketball, not because his game had faded, not because his body had betrayed him on the court, but because a diagnosis had changed the direction of his entire life overnight. For millions of fans, it felt like watching the sun disappear in the middle of the day. This was Magic Johnson, the smile of Los Angeles, the engine of Showtime, the 6'9" point guard who turned basketball into theater. He did not just pass the ball, he bent the game to his imagination. He made teammates look faster, smarter, greater than they were. He made the Lakers feel like more than a team, they were a movement. And then, in November of 1991, everything stopped. The championships, the roaring Forum crowds, the fast breaks, the no-look passes, the rivalry with Larry Bird, the joy that seemed impossible to destroy all of it was suddenly covered by one terrifying word: HIV. Back then, most people did not understand the virus. Many believed it was an automatic death sentence. So when Magic stepped to that microphone, calm on the outside but carrying a storm inside, the sports world did not just think his career was over. Many people quietly wondered how much time he had left. But here's what makes this story impossible to ignore. Magic Johnson did not disappear. He survived the fear. He survived the rumors. He survived the stigma. He survived the whispers from people who once cheered his name but were suddenly afraid to share a court with him. And somehow, after the world prepared to say goodbye, Magic built a second life even bigger than the first. Today, at 66, he is not just an NBA legend. He is a husband, father, grandfather, billionaire businessman, team owner, health advocate, and living proof that one chapter of pain does not get to write the ending of a man's story. But the truth is not simple. His life is not just inspiring. It is complicated, emotional, and full of sacrifices. No highlight reel can show. Before we go deeper, tell us where you are watching from. If you believe Magic Johnson's story is one of the greatest comebacks in sports history, comment 1. If you think the world still does not fully understand what he carried, comment 2. And subscribe, because this story is only getting deeper from here. Showtime before the storm. Before the world knew Magic Johnson as a survivor, it knew him as joy in motion. He arrived in basketball like someone who had been built to change the sport. At Michigan State, he was already unusual. A 6'9" point guard with the handle of a guard, the body of a forward, and the imagination of a street magician. He did not play basketball like he was following a system. He played like he was seeing the next 3 seconds before everyone else. A defender would turn his head and the ball was already gone. A teammate would cut to the rim and somehow Magic had delivered the pass before the cut even looked open. Then came 1979. The Los Angeles Lakers took him in the draft. And almost immediately, the league felt different. In his rookie season, Magic did something that still feels impossible. With Kareem Abdul-Jabbar injured in the 1980 NBA Finals, the young rookie stepped into the biggest moment of his life and played like a man who had been waiting for that stage forever. He became Finals MVP as a rookie. That was not just a basketball achievement, that was the birth of Showtime. The Lakers became fast, glamorous, dangerous, and unforgettable. Magic was the heartbeat, Kareem was the towering force, James Worthy was the finisher, Pat Riley was the architect, but Magic was the electricity. Every fast break felt like a movie scene. Every pass felt like a secret. Every night at the Forum felt like something the rest of the NBA was chasing. And then there was Larry Bird. Magic and Bird did not just compete. They rescued the NBA from fading interest and turned it into must-watch television. Lakers versus Celtics became more than a rivalry. It became identity. It became coast against coast, Hollywood against Boston, pride, flair against toughness. By the late 1980s, Magic had 5 championships, global fame, endorsement deals, and a smile that made people believe nothing bad could ever reach him. But that is the cruel thing about life. Sometimes the storm does not arrive when a man is weak. Sometimes it comes when he is standing at the very top. Cookie, love, and the life behind the smile. Behind the bright lights, behind the championships, behind the celebrity parties and the Showtime cameras, there was Cookie Johnson. Magic met Cookie at Michigan State long before the world fully belonged to him. Back then, he was still Irvin from Lansing, a young man with a giant dream and a personality too big to ignore. Their relationship was never simple. Fame got in the way. Basketball got in the way. The road got in the way. But somehow, they kept finding their way back to each other. Cookie saw parts of him the fans never saw. The world saw Magic, the smiling superstar. Cookie saw Irvin, the man who could be unsure, restless, driven, and sometimes careless with the life he was building. She loved him before the billion-dollar empire, before the Olympic gold, before the business meetings, before the public speeches. She loved him when the future still looked like a question. By 1991, they were finally married. It should have been the beginning of peace. Magic was still one of the biggest names in sports. Cookie was pregnant. The Lakers were moving into another season. Their family was supposed to be entering its happiest chapter, but life was already preparing a test neither of them could have imagined. When Magic received the news that he was HIV positive, one of his first terrifying thoughts was Cookie. Not the cameras, not the fans, not even the Lakers. Cookie. How do you tell the woman who waited for you, loved you, married you, and was carrying your child that everything has changed? That conversation became one of the hardest moments of his life. He knew the news would hurt her. He knew the public would judge. He knew people would ask painful questions. And he also knew Cookie had every reason to walk away. But Cookie did not walk away. She stood beside him. That decision would become one of the most powerful parts of the Magic Johnson story. Not because it was easy, not because it erased the pain, but because in the moment when fear could have destroyed the family before it fully began, Cookie chose courage. And soon, the whole world would see it. The phone call that changed everything. The Lakers were preparing for another season when the call came. Magic was away from home, expecting basketball business, expecting normal problems, expecting the usual rhythm of an NBA life. But this was not normal. The team doctor needed him back in Los Angeles. Something had appeared in his blood test. At first, it must have felt unreal, like a mistake, like a sentence meant for someone else. Magic Johnson was 32 years old. He was recently married. His wife was pregnant. He was still one of the most famous athletes alive. Men like that are not supposed to receive news that makes the room go silent. But the result was clear. Magic Johnson was HIV positive. In 1991, that diagnosis carried a terror that is difficult to explain now. Today, people understand much more about treatment, viral suppression, and long-term health. But back then, fear filled the silence. Many people believed HIV meant death was only a matter of time. Magic had to sit with that knowledge before the world knew, before the microphones, before the headlines, before the public sympathy and public judgment. There was just a man alone with news that had split his life in two. Everything before the diagnosis was one life. Everything after would be another. And the most painful part was not the public announcement. It was telling Cookie. He later admitted that he knew he was about to break her heart. She had been patient with him. She had stood by him through fame, pressure, and uncertainty. Now, after finally becoming his wife, she had to hear that their future had changed in a way neither of them could control. Magic told her he would understand if she wanted to leave. Cookie refused. She told him they would fight it together. That sentence became more than comfort. It became a lifeline. Because Magic was not just facing a medical crisis. He was facing shame, fear, public judgment, and the possibility that basketball, the thing that had defined him, was gone forever. The smile America loved was still there. But now, behind it, Magic was carrying something much heavier than a basketball. The press conference that froze. America, on the 7th of November, 1991, Magic Johnson walked into the Great Western Forum and changed sports history forever. The room was packed. Cameras were ready. Reporters leaned forward, sensing something serious, but few truly understood what they were about to hear. Magic stood there in a dark suit, calm in his voice, even as the world around him was about to shake. Then he said it. He had tested positive for HIV, and he was retiring from basketball immediately. For a moment, the NBA felt like it stopped breathing. Fans who had grown up watching him run the Showtime break could not believe what they were hearing. This was not an injury. This was not a trade. This was not an aging star stepping away after a long decline. This was Magic Johnson. Still powerful, still famous, still young, being forced out by something people barely understood. Cookie stood beside him wearing white. That detail mattered. While the moment carried fear, she chose a color that represented hope, light, and a future. Magic was announcing something devastating. Cookie was silently telling the world the story was not over. Inside the Lakers locker room, the pain was even more personal. His teammates cried. Men who had battled through NBA wars, men trained to hide emotion, broke down because they thought they were losing more than a teammate. They thought they were losing a brother. At that time, HIV was surrounded by so much fear that some people heard Magic's announcement and thought the worst was already written. Even Lakers owner Jerry Buss was overwhelmed. The people who built the franchise around Magic could barely process the idea of a Lakers future without him. But Magic did something extraordinary in that press conference. He did not only retire, he gave himself a new mission. He said he would become a spokesperson for HIV awareness. He wanted young people to understand the danger. He wanted people to be careful, to get educated, to stop thinking it could never happen to them. In one afternoon, Magic lost basketball, but he found a platform bigger than the court. Fear, stigma, and the Dream Team. After the press conference, Magic Johnson discovered something painful. The same world that had celebrated him was now afraid of him. Fans still loved him, but love was mixed with confusion. Players respected him, but some were unsure if they should compete against him. The ignorance around HIV was everywhere. People did not fully understand how the virus spread, and fear filled the gaps where knowledge should have been. For Magic, that fear was not theoretical. It showed up in locker rooms, it showed up in conversations, it showed up in the eyes of people who once treated him like basketball royalty. Overnight, he went from being the player everyone wanted to be near to the man some people were nervous to share a court with. That kind of rejection cuts deeply. But then came 1992, the Dream Team. For the first time, NBA players would represent the United States in Olympic basketball, and the roster looked like something from a basketball fantasy. Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, Scottie Pippen, Patrick Ewing, and Magic Johnson. It should have been a celebration of greatness, but even there, Magic's diagnosis followed him. Some international players did not want to compete against him. Some people still treated his presence as a risk instead of a triumph. Magic played anyway. And when he stepped onto that Olympic stage, he was doing more than chasing a gold medal. He was challenging fear in front of the entire world. Every dribble was a message. Every smile was defiance. Every minute on the court said, "I am still here." The Dream Team dominated. They did not just win games. They overwhelmed opponents and turned Olympic basketball into a global showcase for the NBA. For Magic, that gold medal meant something deeper than another trophy. It was proof that the diagnosis had not erased him. It had changed his life, yes, but it had not taken his dignity, his joy, or his place in the game. The world expected him to fade away. Instead, Magic Johnson stood on the Olympic podium, still smiling, still fighting, still Magic. The daily contract with survival. What people often forget is that surviving is not one dramatic moment. It is not one press conference, one gold medal, or one emotional interview. Surviving is daily. For Magic Johnson, survival became a routine built on discipline, medication, doctor visits, exercise, focus, a constant responsibility to protect his health even when the cameras were gone and the applause was over. In the early 1990s, HIV treatment was nothing like it is today. The science was still developing, the fear was still enormous. Magic had access to strong medical care, but even with that, nothing was guaranteed. His life depended on consistency, patience, and the willingness to accept that this virus would be part of his story forever. His doctor gave him a simple framework: stay positive, take the medicine, and exercise. Simple words, a difficult life. Because taking medicine every day is not just a habit when the stakes are that high, it is a promise. A promise to your family, a promise to your future, a promise to wake up tomorrow and keep going. Over time, treatment improved. Antiretroviral therapy became more effective. What was once widely seen as a death sentence became, for many people with access to care, a manageable condition. Magic's viral load became undetectable, and his health remained strong. But his survival also created a complicated problem. Some people looked at Magic and thought HIV was no longer serious. They saw him smiling, traveling, building businesses, and assumed the danger had disappeared. Magic knew that was not true. He understood that his wealth, access, discipline, and timing all played a role in his outcome. That is why he kept speaking. He warned people not to become careless. He pushed for testing, treatment, education, and funding. He knew his life could inspire hope, but he also knew hope without responsibility could become dangerous. Magic Johnson did not beat HIV by pretending it was easy. He endured by respecting it every single day. The empire built after goodbye. When Magic Johnson retired from basketball, many people thought his greatest years were behind him. They were wrong. In fact, the most shocking part of his financial story is that most of his wealth came after the diagnosis that was supposed to end everything. The NBA made him famous, but business made him a billionaire. Magic did not just attach his name to products. He studied markets. He looked at communities that major companies ignored and saw opportunity where others saw risk. One of his smartest moves came with Starbucks. Magic helped bring Starbucks locations into urban communities that the brand had not fully reached. This was not only about coffee, it was about proving that underserved neighborhoods had buying power, loyalty, and value. The stores worked, and Magic's business reputation grew. From there, he expanded into sports ownership and major investments. The Los Angeles Dodgers, the Los Angeles Sparks, LAFC, the Washington Commanders. Across baseball, basketball, soccer, and football, Magic moved from being the athlete on the court to being one of the people in the ownership room. That transformation matters because the same man who had once been forced to leave the game now owned pieces of the sports world itself. He also built wealth through Equitrust, a life insurance company, one of the least glamorous but most powerful parts of his portfolio. There is something almost poetic about that. A man once viewed through the lens of life expectancy later helped grow a company built around calculating life and risk. Magic made mistakes too. He passed on Nike stock early in his career and later joked that the decision may have cost him a fortune. His time in the Lakers front office was messy and ended awkwardly. But even those moments fit the pattern of his life. He moved forward. He did not stay trapped in regret. That is the real lesson of Magic's business empire. He did not build it because life was easy. He built it because life had already shown him how fast everything could disappear. So he created something that would last, the family that stayed when the world was watching. For all the money, trophies, ownership stakes, public speeches, and business headlines, the most emotional part of Magic Johnson's story may still be the family that stayed standing when everything around them was shaking. Cookie stayed. That is the sentence that holds the entire story together. She stayed when fear was everywhere. She stayed when the cameras were watching. She stayed when the diagnosis brought pain, questions, uncertainty, and public judgment into a marriage that had barely begun. Magic and Cookie were not decades into a quiet, comfortable life when the storm hit. They were newly married. Their future was supposed to be opening, not collapsing. And yet, when Magic told her he would understand if she wanted to leave, Cookie made a decision that would define the rest of their lives. She chose to fight beside him. That kind of loyalty does not erase the pain. It does not make the hard conversations disappear. It does not mean everything became easy after one emotional moment. It means she made a daily choice, again and again, to stand in the fire with her. Together, Magic and Cookie built a family under pressure most people could never understand. Their son EJ was born after the diagnosis, and neither Cookie nor EJ had HIV. That detail became a powerful reminder of how much medical knowledge, careful treatment, and responsibility mattered. Later, they adopted Elisa, and Magic also had his older son Andre from a previous relationship. Each child grew up with the Johnson name above them, but each found a different path. Andre chose a quieter lane in business and entrepreneurship. He learned from the inside, watching how his father moved from basketball legend to deal maker, investor, and owner. EJ stepped into entertainment, fashion, and public life with bold confidence. When EJ came out as gay, Magic's response became one of the most meaningful moments of his fatherhood. He loved his son openly, without shame, and without hesitation. That mattered because Magic understood stigma. He knew what it felt like when people judged what they did not understand. So when it came to his own child, he chose acceptance over fear. Elisa built her own identity in fashion and business, growing up in a family that had already learned how to survive public storms without letting them destroy the home. Now, Magic is also a grandfather. That image matters. Magic Johnson surrounded by Cookie, his children, and grandchildren, laughing on vacations, showing up at family events, living the moments many people in 1991 thought he might never see. The world once wondered how much time he had left. Now, his grandchildren know him not as a headline, not as a diagnosis, but as family. And that may be his greatest championship, the legacy bigger than basketball. Magic Johnson's life at 66 is not a simple victory lap. It is not just a sad story, and it is not just an inspiring one. It is both. It is painful, complicated, powerful, and deeply human. The first lesson is strategic. Magic survived because he adapted. When basketball was taken from him, he did not spend the rest of his life staring at what he lost. He found a new mission. He became an advocate. He became a businessman. He became an owner. He turned fame into influence, influence into opportunity, and opportunity into long-term power. That is what separates a comeback from a transformation. A comeback means returning to who you were. A transformation means becoming something greater than people expected. Magic did not get his old life back. He built a new one. The second lesson is discipline. Health is not something to treat casually. Fame does not protect you. Money can create access, but it cannot replace responsibility. Every day, Magic had to make the same quiet decision. Take the medicine, protect the body, keep moving, keep learning, keep showing up. The world saw the smile, the business empire, the vacations, the ownership deals. But underneath all of it was one daily commitment to survival. The third lesson is family. Cookie's loyalty was not a headline. It was a lifetime of choices. Their marriage reminds us that love is not only emotion, love is action. Love is honesty. Love is staying present when life becomes heavier than expected. And Magic's relationship with his children shows another kind of growth. The ability to accept, support, and celebrate your family for who they truly are. But the most important lesson is this. People should never be reduced to their worst day. Magic Johnson is not only a diagnosis, He is not only a retired player, he is not only a billionaire, he is a man who made mistakes, faced consequences, learned in public, rebuilt his life, helped others, and kept walking forward. And maybe that is the real reason his story still connects with people, because every person, famous or not, will eventually face a moment that divides life into before and after. For Magic, it was a diagnosis in 1991. For someone else, it may be failure, loss, illness, betrayal, or a dream that suddenly falls apart. The question is not whether life will change. The question is what you build after it changes. Magic's answer was not perfect, but it was powerful. He chose purpose over shame. He chose responsibility over denial. He chose family over isolation. He chose to use his platform not only to protect his image, but to educate people who might never have listened to anyone else. That is why his legacy is bigger than basketball. The championships made him famous, but the years after retirement made him important. The no-look passes made fans cheer, but the way he stood in front of fear made people think. The Showtime Lakers gave him glory, but the fight after 1991 gave him meaning. And in the end, that may be the most peaceful message in the whole story. Do not laugh at someone's pain, do not judge someone's struggle from the outside, and do not assume a person's story is finished because one chapter looks dark. Life can be rebuilt with honesty, patience, courage, and the right people beside you. So if this story moved you, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear that life can still be rebuilt after everything changes. Comment 1 if you see Magic Johnson as one of the greatest survivors in sports history. Comment 2 if Cookie's loyalty was the most powerful part of the story. And tell us where you are watching from.